Another thing that we talked about recently that I sent you was this new AI ability, that AI has the ability to translate some of these ancient languages now, which is really interesting.
Some scrolls weren't lost. They were silenced, hidden so deeply that only a machine, cold, tireless, unafraid, could find them. And now that AI has begun to read these dead scripts, we're discovering something terrifying. Civilizations warned us. Not just once, repeatedly. Warnings buried in ash, carved in stone, etched into silence. And we weren't meant to hear them. Until now. They come from everywhere. The frozen ruins of Pompeii, the shattered cities of the Mayans, the forgotten valleys of the Indus. These aren't just fragments of history. They're voices, locked behind symbols we never understood. Until recently, they were nothing more than decorative mysteries. But now, machines trained to sell ads and predict faces are doing something else entirely. They're reading. AI isn't decoding these messages like a linguist. It isn't translated. It's recognizing patterns, frequencies, shapes, rhythms, pulling meaning from what once looked like noise. In the process, it's giving breath back to the dead. Scripts that haven't spoken in thousands of years are whispering again. But here's what no one expected. The words aren't peaceful. They're not stories of life or wisdom. They speak of fire, of silence, of collapse. Again and again. The deeper AI goes, the more one question grows louder. What were they trying to hide? And who wanted them silenced in the first place? In 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius unleashed hell. A wall of fire and ash swallowed Pompeii and Herculaneum in minutes. People died mid-step. Cities froze in time. But in the wreckage of Herculaneum, something impossible survived. A private library. Buried under pyroclastic flows hot enough to turn wood to stone, hundreds of papyrus scrolls were carbonized, preserved not by design, but by disaster. For nearly 2,000 years, they were unreadable. Any attempt to unroll them crumbled them to dust. Their ink had fused with ash. Their secrets, it seemed, were gone forever. Then came the Vesuvius Challenge. In 2023, a group of technologists launched a $1 million competition to virtually unroll these scrolls using CT scanning and machine learning. A college student named Luke Farrater submitted a breakthrough. He used AI to pull a word, just one, out of the blackened ruin. That word? Porphyros, Greek for purple, a color of royalty, power, control. Soon more words followed, then sentences, then warnings. The scroll had belonged to Philodemus, a philosopher who challenged empire, questioned gods, and believed power feared the truth. The scroll didn't record the past, it predicted a cycle. Fire, silence, control. But that was just one scroll. What happens when AI starts unlocking them all? The scroll from Vesuvius was just the beginning. Across continents, buried under dust, stone, and silence, lie other scripts, equally unreadable, not because they're invisible, but because we never cracked their codes. For centuries, they were nothing more than artifacts, mute objects in museum cases. The Indus Valley script, found on ancient seals and pottery across modern-day Pakistan and India, has never been translated. No Rosetta Stone, no bilingual key. Just a language that appeared, flourished, and vanished, like someone wrote a message and buried the decoder. Rongorongo from Easter Island is even stranger. Carved in alternating lines, left to right, then right to left. It looks like mirrored writing. Some believe it held genealogies or sacred stories. Others suspected recorded the island's descent into environmental collapse. By the time outsiders arrived, the culture that wrote it was already gone. And then there's Etruscan, spoken in Italy before Rome. Thousands of inscriptions survive. We can read the letters, even pronounce the words, but their meaning? Still locked. AI, is changing that. Pattern recognition, clustering, spatial analysis, it doesn't need to understand. It only needs to see. And what it sees is disturbing. Across these dead languages, certain patterns repeat: fire, collapse, silence, cleansing, and something even harder to define: suppression. AI doesn't understand language the way we do. It doesn't need to. It doesn't care about meaning, intention, or myth. It looks for structure. It sees what our eyes have missed for centuries. Using neural networks, symbol clustering, and spatial analysis, machines trained on thousands of ancient characters are finding relationships humans never could.
They notice which symbols appear together, how often they repeat, where they show up in a line, what comes before and after. One algorithm breaks characters apart and rebuilds them, cleaning up damaged letters, predicting missing ones. Another isolates repeating clusters, grouping them by function, verbs, names, places, warnings. This isn't reading, it's reconstruction. It's the ability to pull logic from ruins. Tools like ProtoSnap now help align cuneiform signs written thousands of years apart. Systems like Hiero-LM tackle the complexity of Egyptian hieroglyphs. Even erased texts, palimpsests, can be recovered using AI trained to detect ghostly impressions under newer ink. A machine can find a sentence no one knew was there, then finish it. But what happens when that sentence says something no one wanted remembered? Because the more we decode, the clearer it becomes. These weren't just records. They were warnings, deliberate, layered, and hidden. Now that we've covered how AI is doing the decoding, it's time to lean back into the emotional and philosophical tension. What if this knowledge wasn't just forgotten, but buried on purpose? Who decides what survives and what vanishes? We like to think ancient languages disappeared naturally. Civilizations fade, empires fall, scripts go out of use. But that's not always the truth. Some of these writing systems didn't die. They were killed. When Rome rose, Etruscan shrank into silence. Not because it was irrelevant, but because its rituals, its teachings, and its view of the cosmos didn't align with Roman power. Certain Etruscan texts hinted at celestial cycles, prophecy, and necromancy. Too dangerous, too disruptive. So they vanished. In the hills of southern China, a secret script called Nushu was created by women, used in songs, letters, and embroidery, passed down in silence, hidden from men, hidden from power. For centuries, scholars dismissed it as decorative. But when AI started decoding it in 2025, the words were raw. Sorrow, resistance, unseen daughters, warnings woven into moonlight. And then there's Rongorongo, the Easter Island glyphs. When colonizers arrived, the entire reading tradition was already gone, wiped out. No teachers, no translations, just wooden tablets, mute, mysterious, possibly prophetic. One theory, the islanders encoded knowledge in a way outsiders couldn't read. As their world collapsed, they didn't cry out, they carved. So the question isn't just what these scripts say, it's why someone made sure we wouldn't hear them. Until now. Now we escalate. The question shifts from why these scripts were silenced to what they were trying to say. In this section, we explore recurring themes that AI is surfacing across unrelated civilizations. These are not random coincidences. They might be patterns, or something worse. Here's where it gets strange. These scripts come from civilizations that never met, different continents, different eras, different belief systems. But AI is starting to see patterns, and they aren't cultural quirks or poetic metaphors. They're warnings. Across Mayan glyphs, fragments of Etruscan rites, Indus seals, and scrolls buried by Vesuvius, the same motifs repeat. Fire, silence, a cycle of destruction and renewal. The idea that knowledge should be hidden, then returned, but only after great collapse. In the Mayan ruins, one phrase appears across cities hundreds of miles apart: the Great Thirst. Scholars now link it to a prolonged drought, but AI picked up something else: references to celestial alignments, blood rituals to balance the sky, warnings that feel less metaphor, more instruction. The Philadelphus scroll speaks of strategic quietude, the silencing of voices before upheaval. Another fragment mentions the moment when the light goes out and the cleansing begins. Are these just symbolic, or were they meant literally? If so many civilizations described cycles of fire and silence before falling, how many were trying to record a system, not a story? And if so, was the collapse the end, or just the beginning of something they knew would return? AI doesn't dream, it doesn't fear, it doesn't wonder if it should stop. It just keeps reading. Once a machine is trained to find structure in chaos, it doesn't care what that structure reveals. It can't tell metaphor from prophecy, poetry from prediction. It only sees what comes next. That's the risk, because the fragments found in ancient texts don't come with warning labels. Fire will return, the light will go out, a cleansing will begin. Are those metaphors? Philosophical metaphors? Or are they describing something real? And if AI doesn't know the difference, do we? The scroll from Herculaneum wasn't just philosophical. It warned of imposed silence, of rulers using quiet as a weapon, of knowledge suppressed until a cycle resets. Some researchers dismiss this as symbolic, but others aren't so sure, because these patterns aren't isolated. They're surfacing everywhere, and they don't feel like random prophecies. They feel like a message, buried deep, meant to survive destruction and outlive the people who wrote it. Now, AI is retrieving that message. But here's the question no one wants to ask. What if the warning wasn't meant to be understood until it was already too late? There's a difference between forgotten knowledge and forbidden knowledge. What if these ancient texts weren't just lost to time, but hidden on purpose, not because of war or decay, but because someone, somewhere, decided the message was too dangerous to survive? AI has no sense of danger, no sense of myth or morality.
It doesn't pause when it finds something unsettling. It doesn't ask if it should keep going. It just does. And now machines are unlocking texts that speak not only of collapse, but of intentional erasure. Palimpsests, manuscripts scrubbed clean and rewritten, are revealing ghost texts, erased philosophies, warnings, instructions. Some buried beneath religious texts, others beneath prayer books, some beneath nothing but silence. In 2021, AI helped uncover a hidden mathematical work by Archimedes, scraped off, written over, forgotten. That was harmless. But what happens when the buried text isn't math, but a ritual, or a prophecy, or a curse? What if it was hidden for a reason? We've always assumed that the past wanted to be preserved, that ancient people wrote for the future. But what if they didn't? What if some messages were meant to die with their writers? And what if we are the first ones foolish enough to bring them back? They weren't neighbors. They didn't trade. They didn't speak the same tongue or pray to the same gods. But somehow, they left behind the same message. In the Shang dynasty of ancient China, diviners carved questions into bone, then cracked them to read the answers. Will there be famine? Will the plague come? They asked the bones when to speak, when to act, when to stay silent. Thousands of miles away, the Maya etched glyphs into stone, cycles of drought, sacrifice, betrayal. Their word for a prolonged collapse? The Great Thirst, a cosmic imbalance they tried to correct with blood. From Henan province in China, women wrote their grief in secret code. From Italy, Etruscans mapped omens in the stars. From Easter Island, someone carved mirrored warnings into wood and watched their world vanish. These scripts weren't written by the same hand, but the themes are identical. silence, fire, decay, censorship, rebirth. And now one thing connects them all: a machine. A system that doesn't feel awe or fear. A system that reads what no human ever could. And with every symbol it decodes, one truth becomes harder to ignore. These civilizations weren't just recording their past. They were preparing someone for the future. Only one question remains: who? There's a reason ancient knowledge fades. Time wears it down. Nature reclaims it. Power buries it. But some knowledge was sealed, not lost, not forgotten. Sealed, like a warning behind glass, waiting for hands that couldn't be burned by it, waiting for something that wouldn't hesitate to open it. That something is here now. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't care what it finds. It just keeps reading. AI is unsealing more than scrolls. It's unsealing intent. It's unsealing memory. It's unsealing the final words of civilizations that may have seen too much. And what happens when one of those voices, just one, says something specific? A date, a name, a location, a final entry not meant to be read. Until now. Will we even recognize it? Or will the machine see it first? And if it does, will it tell us? Or just wait for us to find out what it already knows?